Hey guys, still here and welcome back to Wargame Brendryen. It's plain vanilla wargame today. Mud fight, 10v10 tactical, and of course there is plenty of room for tactical maneuvering these. Not too many units, quite a few heavily armed units, heavily armored units. There's not any room for the weaker stuff. You go full in with Leclerc, Leopard 2A5s, the big guns are gonna come out. Anyway, today I am following Gandalf the Mechanized. Just for that nickname alone, this man deserves some kudos. Originally the replay was sent in by Joe Armstrong, who definitely played a really good game on the left. I will try to feature that a little bit. But mostly I'm going to be focusing on Gandalf the Mechanized. Now he's going to be operating on the right hand side, and he has a couple of units. Most notably, the Leclerc. I really like the Leclerc as a tank. It is slightly less expensive than the other tanks of similar quality. You get a lot more rate of fire, because this thing has 12 rounds a minute, and on top of that, it has very good mobility. A downside to the Leclerc though, you don't have as much penetration as the other heavy tanks, and you don't have as much armor as the other tanks. So you're going to have to try and make up for that lack of armor and that lack of firepower by either closing in and making sure that you are close enough to do more damage, or by using smoke screens to make sure the enemy cannot see the tank and thus cannot fire at it. And Gandalf is going to give us an excellent display of how to do that. That's something that really caught my eye, how he was using that Leclerc on the right hand side, which is normally not really an area where you see too much armored action. If you want to go with the tank, you go here on the left, where you have all these tiny tree lines, a little bit of maneuvering room, cover to cover, and it is not just a game of tanks moving from cover to cover, but also recon. Now the game starts, it seems like we have a fairly good division of teammates here. Gandalf is going over to the right, he's being backed up by a double O book, or double odd book I think. We have KM900s, which seem to be bowing off to the left, potentially in response to, there it is, cluster fire. This guy saw it coming and is not sticking around to watch the pretty lights in the sky do damage to his vehicles. Because Humvees and KM900s don't exactly have the firepower, or the armor, to sustain this. Red 4 starts out well by splashing a command vehicle and immediately killing it with the rocket artillery, and unfortunately for Gandalf over here, he also lost his AA. Over on the left, we have a couple of AMX-10RC recon vehicles, another Crotal, a Kiyomaru Shiki. Very good tank. Armor is a bit lacking on this thing though. It only has 20 points of frontal armor. Tries to make up for that with good penetration and good rate of fire. But if somebody starts to shoot at you, you will definitely notice, because you're immediately going to start losing hit points, instead of those rounds mostly bouncing off. Now, it seems that somebody's saying, what a waste, double odd buck. I'm not sure exactly what he's talking about, because I see a couple of large craters, but no dead units. He might have marked this thing, the LAR 160. I'm not really sure what exactly happened here. But Red 4 definitely got a couple of high value kills over here. One got the CV, and I think that this might have been the artillery strike that landed somewhere here. Anyway, it's time to focus on Gandalf, and I never thought I'd say something like that in a wargame match. Gandalf is pushing up. Sorry, I cannot do that with a straight face. Gandalf is pushing up with his Leclerc. This is where that excellent mobility comes into play. 75 kilometers off-road. Really maneuverable tank. Has medium optics, so it definitely benefits from having the AMX-10RC over here, but it doesn't strictly need it. Now take note that Gandalf also has his own smoke screens. He has a VPM 120, which puts up smoke at or near the position of the Leclerc, allowing it to still perform pretty well out in the open, while not having too much risk. Because of course there will be ATGMs coming your way, either infantry carried, vehicle mounted, or thrown around by aircraft. At either rate, whatever throws it, as long as it cannot see you, it cannot fire at you. So that's what he's definitely banking on. Now something that Hikey over here did very well is capture these buildings. And this is quite unusual. Most of the time you don't actually get here, because most of the time this building is quickly occupied by Red 4. For some reason though, Red 4 is not here. Even this sector seems pretty clean. This is not going to stay this way the whole match, of course, but for now, it's an interesting turn of events. As with these sectors, they have 3 sectors for income, and red only has the 2. So if they can capitalize on this for long enough, they should be able to field more units, and as such, have a better chance of winning the game. Now over on the left, we have another push going on. Commandos Para are scouting out for both the Kiyomarushiki and the Leopard to A5 from Joe Mo. So we got a couple of super heavies over here. And just to highlight the difference between these 2 tanks. This thing has 20 frontal armor, 9 side, 12 rounds of minute rate of fire, and 23 AP. The Leopard 2A5 is a bit more rounded. It has less rate of fire, but better armor. And 22 points of armor versus 20 points of armor is definitely going to make a difference in how survivable this thing is. Will the Kiyomarushiki outtrade a T80 UK or a T80 UM, a T72 heavy? Maybe. But do you really want to risk that? Do you really want to risk a fight with that T80 UK that's down there in those bushes? I think it's a risky prospect. I personally wouldn't really take that chance. Much as I like this tank, I think it is not ideal. But we'll just check JC Zim's room rates after the match. Now, Leclerc is still pushing forward, once again courtesy of the smokescreen. If you got no natural terrain cover, you just create your own. So Leclerc is currently sitting on the road, and while there are a couple of targets, it, like the targets, don't have line of sight. So it's time to push out and see if we can take down a couple of these things. They might still be outside of his maximum range. He's rotating the turret a bit, but that seemed more like an idle animation than an actual kill maneuver. So at the moment, these things are definitely not in range yet. And yes, I know that this is a helicopter and that a tank generally doesn't do too well at firing against helicopters. But I definitely also saw some land-based vehicles. Speaking of which, T-55 or T-62 over there. I think it might be a T-55, another one of those Igman. Yeah, he is manned by QWERTY. T-55 Igman is not a particularly big threat. A Leclerc should be able to 2-shot one of those. His right flank is still pretty clean. There's not a whole lot of infantry manning this, and the infantry is all trying to maneuver around. That's going to pose quite the problem to the Bonbu over here, which have nothing standing between them and the enemy is approaching fast with LSTR. A couple of Panzer Jaeger are pushing forward. Unfortunately, they managed to quickly kill off an AMX-10 RC. AMX-10 returns the job, or returns the favor, and takes them out, but not before losing one of their brethren. So he lost his line of sight from this position. Hussars over here are going to have to take up the slack. At this point still, the Leclerc keeps moving around. Now, we know that this side is not exactly as secure as he would like. So this smokescreen is going to be even more vital for his survival. Duck back into the smoke and make sure that you don't get hit. Don't get detected, don't get hit. This does, of course, come at a cost to the VPM over here. These things are pretty hungry in supplies. You can see that he brings up a logistics trucks and immediately starts to resupply this thing. But I kind of wonder if this thing has enough supplies on board to completely resupply the VPM. And I don't actually think that that's the case. Now, interestingly, Red 4 does not push to contact. They don't see how far they can go. While they could pretty easily have pushed all the way down here, because there is nothing out there. I know that I could switch to neutral, but I don't want to miss out on seeing Gandalf the mechanized kill/loss ratio at the end of the game. That's why I am not switching. As for Leclerc, it seems to be a little indecisive here. Of course, you don't exactly know what sort of HGM infantry units are inside this town. And with that, he does not seem to want to risk it. But he's also missing out on the opportunity to take out the Igman and the other reconnaissance unit out there. As for range, I think the Leclerc can hit from over there to about here. So he would have to dash out from his smokescreen. And instead of doing that, the smoke is landing on the other side of the Leclerc. So it seems like Gandalf is more banking on falling to the right than pushing up to the left. Still, this sector is now abandoned. Interestingly, Red 4 isn't capping it either. The CV from blue is on the move. pending an attack from Red 4 that they really are not going to stick around and wait for. But where's Red's CV? It's not there. Now this is when Gandalf could have a problem with these two Conquerors over here. Instead he takes out a 15-point vehicle over there, probably line of sight being blocked. Although these guys don't seem to have the same problem. He hits one, does not take him out. Fire computer reset. Accuracy drops to 7%. And he's also facing off against the T-55M. So now it's time to use that smoke screen and fall back. And yes, you can insert your French running away jokes here. Still, he's not quite running away, because running away would require either a very long smoke screen or some other target taking the punches, because this tank is not really capable of sustaining any good hits at the moment. It's also not capable of hitting anything. It only has a 12% accuracy, thanks to that firing computer, which does not work. So, more smoke's coming up. He does hit the peon over here. You can see that he's kind of trading with it, but normally a Leclerc would have already killed this one and that one. It just can't hit. Must be quite frustrating for the crew over there. He's down to 4 hit points, so he's going to have to play quite safe over here, because he might lose this tank. And this is an expensive tank, nonetheless. It is 165 points. In a tactical match, it's going to be quite difficult to get that many points back. Now, he pushes out of the smoke screen. This tank is not reversing, which does make it really susceptible to being shot in the ass. Rear armor is only 3 points. This thing is not supposed to run away. But with a firing computer that's now operational, he immediately one-shots the OT-64 over there that was trying to fire an HGM, and he falls back into cover. Red 4 sees this opportunity and moves up. We got T-55As, T-55AH, infantry coming up. It looks like QWERTY is definitely making a move. Speaking of making a move, we got, I think, Itachi over here with a... Itachi with a LAR 160, firing a pretty random cluster barrage to the left of that attacking force. I don't think there was anything here. So that was a big waste of supplies over there. At the very least, the Leclerc has survived. It is going to need a bit more repairs, but once it's done, it should have very little trouble pushing back against all of these units. In the meanwhile, over on the left, we have Jomo with his Leopard 2A5. The Kyiv is still over there. I'm not exactly sure how much these guys have killed as of yet. Score-wise, Blue is still lagging behind. So, while they're definitely holding their own, they're not actually getting the kills that they kind of need. Now, a couple of helicopters are now trying to piss off the Leclerc over here. A Ninja, having none of that, immediately takes down the helicopter. They got the crash. Still has 2 of them left, and more importantly, it's also spotting everything. Chukyonsa have been forced to relocate, and that relocation is probably going to get even more critical. I personally would not have taken this shot. I'm not sure if he was micromanaging them or not, but this shot was not ideal. If he'd have moved his infantry a little bit further back, then he could have taken the shot only when this thing was in better range, or when it was presenting side profile. Side profile probably would have killed it, and it would not have exposed the Chukyonsa to this much return fire. Now, he's trying to save his infantry. He's pushing back with an AH-1T, which interestingly is able to kill off the tank, the infantry, and is now working its way towards another tank, which it also kills. Where is Red 4's AA response? You could argue that this is it, past Praga. It only has a range of 1400 meters against helicopters, so it's really not that likely to be a threat. This thing is Sopel, right flank. Now, to try and cover the right flank a little bit, Gandalf pushed in a couple of Chasseur 85. These guys are not great, but at the very least they can pose as a sort of speed bump to make sure that Red 4 infantry is going to have a harder time pushing up. They have some AMX 13 VTT with them. But, well, against LSTR, even this combination is going to be hard-pressed to actually get anything done. To make matters worse, there's Sappersy over on the right and Formosa right in front. So these guys are going to go down really, really quickly. And that leaves him with the Leclerc. The mortar is definitely trying to support, but it's almost out of rounds. So it might, if lucky, get a kill over here, but I kind of doubt it. Yeah, he's definitely firing in the general direction of that infantry group over there. But these guys, without further assistance, were pretty much doomed to get killed off. At the very least, though, Blue has been able to do quite the infiltration in the rear of their base. I think they killed off a couple of higher value targets. Unfortunately, I wasn't paying too much attention to this. But they managed to pull the scores back to 1460, 1580. So they definitely got a little bit closer than they were. The gap was about 300 points. Now we're back to only 120. Of course, that does come at the cost of sacrificing units. But so long as you make positive in a move like that, well, you're still doing quite well. Double Odd Buck still has a couple of Bedouins here on the right, and he is moving them up, but it's going to take these guys a long, long time before they get anywhere near the front line. Now, Leclerc has been getting company by Villaret. It is now repaired. Just need to make it to the front line, and unfortunately, without the cover of the VPM 120 over here, he's not quite safe in operating this tank yet. So he has to wait for assistance. Red has now captured Alpha, as was to be expected. And while there are a couple of attack markers over here saying, hey guys, we need more units, nobody is really stepping up yet. Which does leave their right flank in a very, very dangerous spot. Because there are some units holding the line, but if pushed by enemy infantry, this is going to fall very, very quickly. So it's time for the Leclerc to at least try and get a couple of their transports out of the way before they rush that position. I still really like the look of this tank, by the way. Looks sleek. There we go. Line up a shot, take one out. Interestingly, the other one does not get taken out yet. There you go. 80% accuracy takes it out. New smokescreen set up to make sure that any HGM infantry which might be hiding out in the open are not getting a good line of sight. And the Leclerc pushes back into the smokescreen and makes sure that it does not yet get detected. Instead, actually, he's pushing further forward. I thought he would stop here, but no, he's pushing further forward. And potentially trying to help save the Chokyon Sa over there, which, surprisingly, are still alive. Ah, this is his plan. He was pushing into a small tree line over here, and he's using that for cover. How exactly you can hide a tank in that beats me, but apparently Leclerc is capable of doing that. LSTR-40, which murdered his infantry, have now been detected, but I think they're too deep into the tree line for this Leclerc to get a couple of good shots at. MI-25 S-24 on the right flank. Not that much of a risk with flight missiles. Very inaccurate, especially if this thing is moving. 20% is really quite dreadful. Still, you don't want to risk it. If this thing somehow gets lucky and manages to get a side shot, or God forbid a back shot at this Leclerc, you can still kiss this tank goodbye. So hopefully this thing is just going to piss off, get repaired, and be back in maybe 10 minutes. But that's 10 minutes that does allow Gandalf over here to get his AA affairs in order. Score-wise, we're still very close. 110 points between the two teams. And interestingly, most of the points are actually pretty well distributed. I mean, sure, you got a couple of guys who have 35 points or 30 points. It's not that much. On Red 4, there are definitely a few guys who have not performed at all. Like Rage over here for 5 points. 5 points means he killed a transport. Just a transport truck of infantry. Aside from that, I don't think he did much. Now, I did see a fast mover over here. Yep, a couple of MiGs. Probably a duo of MiG-29. Because you usually don't see one. There we go. Leclerc fired again. Took out a drug team over there. And the drug, I think, does not have the range to get to the Leclerc anyway. Still, he's going to really have to pick his shots because he's running out of rounds. He only has 5 left. And he's also running out of fuel. He is pushing another AMX-10 RC forward. You could argue that this is just a reconnaissance vehicle, but it can do quite a bit more. It has medium stealth, can get through 12 points of armor, that is at max range. Unfortunately, the gun is not stabilized. So you move or you shoot, but you don't do both at the same time. Thanks to the smoke screen, he now has a good position over here overlooking the field. Same for the Hussar, and if anything gets too close, Joe Armstrong Sr. over here with the RBS 56 is going to make sure that that gets taken out very, very quick. Now over on the right, Jomo is pushing up with Bojack and our Dutch. JZ Zim with the SDF Rangers. And the Kyu, I think, was taking a bit of a beating from enemy infantry inside this town. Has been repaired, thanks to the K511, and is probably awaiting targets. But with limited reconnaissance in this tree line, I don't think they're going to be having too much to shoot at. The CV is here stupid. I'm not sure if that is a confirmed position for their CV, but it might be. I'm not really sure. At the very least, it's not something that they really want to be handling right now. Kills, 1910. Enemy kills, 2040. They're ranging from 100 to 10 points apart. It is really quite close, this game. Interestingly, a Perret pushes forward. Very, very deadly HEGM, but also very high value target. 110 points over there. It is capable of inflicting a lot of damage, if it hits. It's really expensive to resupply, and it is quite easy to kill. Because while it might look like a tank, this thing actually only has 6 frontal armor. So a tank decides to take a shot at it, and it has a pretty decent chance of actually killing this thing. Still think it looks really, really weird with those large missile tubes, I guess, on top of it. Oh well. Back to the right flank, where once again the Leclerc is pushing forward, this time around with a full complement of rounds. The Mi-25 is also back. This is, interestingly, this is Elisa Airlines. This is where the Leclerc does have to fall back. Because once again, we got no AA. Nothing whatsoever. So if this helicopter decides to make a play, there we go, we need AA. If he does decide to make a play and he's going for it, he's going to take out the Picoud. If he can kind of get his weapons aligned. Look at that, it's not particularly accurate, this helicopter. There we go, he's down. This also gives Red 4 Delta. So now they have 3 sectors. Normally it would be 4, but Foxtrot is heavily pushed by Blue 4. All the way on the left. And Jomo recognizes this. We need to capitalize on this. The right flank is not doing terribly well. So it has to be the left flank that makes the push. Scores are now not looking that good. With that loss of the CV, they're down 300 points. So they still have quite a bit of work to do before they even that up. This would help, because it is 75 points. But they really need to make sure that they neutralize this advantage that Red 4 has. And make sure that they don't get too many points ahead in income. What the hell is this? I think that might be a Raketas firing rockets to put up a miniature smokescreen. But I'm not really sure what the plan was here. This was weird. But you saw the rockets come out and then a unit started moving right. So I think it might have been a way to blind the AMX-10. Or make sure that the AMX-10 couldn't get a good shot off. Even if it did, then it would still get shot at by the helicopter. Now, he's smoking up his own units, but that thing works both ways. If you smoke up your own units, then, much like World of Warships, the enemy kind of knows where your units are as well. And of course, you just start randomly lobbing HE rounds into a smokescreen, and you see what comes out. And in this case, it's the AMX-10RC, which does take some damage. It has a bit of armor on it, but not really enough to sustain any further hits. Over on the left, they have just managed to take out a Tunguska, which apparently was active, seeing as a Sea aircraft was able to take it out. Scores are once again almost even, 2470, 2560. The tanks, unfortunately, not that healthy. Leopard 2A5 took a rain of fire and has been brought down to 2 hit points. They also lost some other stuff while this napalm came down. The Kiyu is still over here. There's still not a whole lot that this Kiyu can do at the moment, though. Yak 38 comes in. That's 4 500 kilogram bombs. Not napalm. But still, I'd rather not have that thing blow up the... Ow. Logistics. Shit. Over on the right, we have a couple of Spatsnaz who are walking through the woods. Just having a casual stroll through the woods and encountering a couple of machine guns firing back at them. Quickly disappear back into the forest. Chasseur once again pushing forward. I'm a bit hesitant about this move. Because I think that they're going to get killed off regardless. These guys cost you 15 points each. Plus transports, which might have already been taken out. And speaking of taken out, he pushed his own CV forward. His P4PC. Tried to push it forward. And a T-55 recon tank managed to be the ultimate party pooper and immediately took it down. So while they were trying to make sure that this sector was again neutralized, they lost the CV. Fortunately, they're still only 60 points behind at this point. And the Chasseurs are making progress, killing off a 15-point vehicle. Now, this is where Gandalf turns into a man after my own heart. He is going to capture a supply truck. We got a cargo heading this way. And I don't think that Rage over here was expecting to see French infantry. French infantry take out a recon tank. And this was the culprit that took out their CV. And they capture a logistics truck. I think the truck originally was sent down here to start resupplying Red 4 infantry, which at that point was here. But that Rage might have forgotten that this logistics truck was actually still heading that way. I mean, it is going to take that thing a fair bit of time to actually get there. Unfortunately, the Spatsnaz are pulling back. And with them, VDV-90 and more Spatsnaz. This is also why I would not use Chasseur, especially not in a setup of 20 guys together. These guys fire HE charges. RPO. This is lethal to infantry. If you spread these guys out, they might take out one squad fast, but now they're doing damage to both squads at the same time. Because those HE weapons have a bit of a splash radius. And with that, the Chasseurs are very rapidly disappearing, and unfortunately, the supply truck gets recaptured by Red 4. Well, shit. Leclerc was trying to move through the town over here, pushing to the right, trying to assist their infantry, but unfortunately not fast enough, because by the time that the Leclerc almost got in position to fire, there was nothing left. RBS 90 was able to get at least one hit on the Mi-25 over there, doing a fair bit of damage. Not enough to take it down, but probably enough to scare it off for a little bit, making sure that it does not pose a threat to the Leclerc or anything else that's on this flank. Because aside from an NM45, they still don't have anything that can shoot down a helicopter. Or a plane, for that matter. Looks like we got a sniper team over here, which is definitely making the sound of a very, very big gun. It's the RT-20. They fired one round at the RBS-56 over there. It only took out one guy, but I think, well, he must have been cut in half with a caliber that size. RBS-56 is pushing back, or is falling back slowly. Leclerc pushing up. These guys, if they get the back of the Leclerc, could still do quite a bit of damage. So it's important that we find them. And for finding a sniper team, you basically need to be on top of them. He could, however, be using his mortars. The mortars which got taken down. Those mortars. Really, dude? Were you not moving your mortars? Well, that sucks. Is that one? No, that's a Crotal that got taken out early. I'm not exactly sure when his mortars got taken out, but his mortars are no longer available to provide smoke for the Leclerc. Which means that he has to manage this thing quite a bit safer. On the left, we're still... well, we're making progress, but not fast. BMP-1P, murdering a vehicle. AMX-10 trying to fire back at it, but not quite having good line of sight. Fortunately, this thing fires, gets taken out, This thing returns fire and gets taken out by the M24P, which then is going to get taken out by the Gepard from Jomo. Scores 33-85, 33-30. Blue's finally ahead. The battle's not over yet. Red still has 7 minutes left. And finally, the Bedouin from Double Odd Buck are actually in a position where they might start to scout out anything that comes over here. Now I think that this is the helicopter from Malaysia Airlines that got hit by the RBS-90 over here. So it flew all the way back around Alpha, back to Echo to get repaired. On the left, once again, the whole forest is on fire. This is not a very hospitable place. So, time to just ignore the whole forest and push out. Unfortunately, they were waiting, and without any good AA, Flak Panzer Gepard not in a position to assist, they cannot actually do anything. Interestingly, this Flak Panzer Gepard has both weapons turned off instead of just the Stinger. You don't really need to turn off the Stinger, because the Stinger is going to fire regardless of whether the radar is active and does not give your position away to overflying siege aircraft. Now Gandalf is requesting that the RBS-56 moves up as well as the Bedouin, because we are losing a bit of line of sight over here. He's also brought another group of Chasseurs with AMX-13s for support, but, well, support is questionable with these units. So he tries to push them forward, tries to make sure the infantry over here is falling back. They're only still very, very little in front of the enemy team points-wise. 35-95, 34-50. Once again, interestingly, the Senka give their position away. This time around by firing at the JSDF Rangers. And once again, the Leclerc is not in a good position to return fire. A mortar... Sorry, not even a mortar. This is a really big gun. As the Bacan 1C is... returns fire at the Senka. Senka, run away. Well, I don't think that's going to work out. Nope. They're definitely running away. And they're pulling back into cover. Once again, taking a shot at the JSDF Rangers. Seriously, that caliber though. 2 AP, 1 HE. 15 rounds a minute rate of fire, but they only carry 30 rounds. Leclerc, finally in a position, takes a shot, takes them out. This is what should have happened a long, long time ago. But it's not easy with this town. He has to either focus here or there, and he cannot be in two places at once. So he's going to have to pick. And it seems that a couple of times he picked wrong. Once again, Chasseurs are getting barbecued by the Spetsnaz and going down very quickly. VDV over here, Elite VDV against Veteran Chasseur. It's not going to work out. They just don't have the staying power. I personally would not go into this forest with any kind of infantry at this point. It's not worth it. Let the enemy keep their units over here. Over here they're not a threat. They can be contained by these units over here. So let them stay there. Let them be an investment. Don't give them any opportunity to gain points, which is exactly what Joe Armstrong and Gandalf over here are doing. So with this, Red is actually gaining more points by killing off low to medium value blue for infantry. They're also, however, giving their position away. It looks like the Bacan was able to take out one set of infantry. I don't think we're going to be able to get the other one, although this Fennec is trying. Unfortunately, Fennecs are not known for their visibility. Poor optics means that they need somebody else to fire or to spot them. And when they get shot at, of course, the infantry reveals their position. When they stop firing, you no longer have a line of sight. So either you can take damage and run away, or you can push up and get shot at, but not both at the same time. You cannot go on the offensive. Even if you do go on the offensive, Elisa Airlines is going to make sure that it stays the only airlines in this business. It apparently does not take any sort of competition. Holy shit, what the fuck is this? Itachi. Dear sir, please inform me why exactly you're firing AP cluster rounds at a forest where there's infantry. I thought at this point most, if not all, of the Wargame community was pretty veteran, but this guy is either thinking that there might be vehicles over here, or is thinking that his AP cluster rounds can actually damage infantry. Which, for the uninitiated, is not the case. Another set of AMX-13s push forward. Wow, really? Why though, dude? It's not worth it. Battle on the left. They have gained ground, but it's still pretty undecided. They are, however, spotting a quad stack of mortars, and this is pretty valuable. They can take these down. That would help. But of course, the mortar is not going to stick around for too long. And it's going to take those rounds from the backhand 1C quite a while to actually make it all the way over to the front line. Leopard 2A5 is still alive. Short Arrow is trying to keep the Yak 38 at bay, but does not do enough damage. Fortunately, a couple of Block 15s, or one Block 15 and one Block 52, definitely help in securing the airspace. Blue, 4080. Red, 3930. Still not quite there yet. You need a difference of at least 10% if you want to get a victory. If you don't have that 10% margin, it's going to end in a draw. This is an interesting target. 40 points. Leclerc, not thinking about it, but doesn't quite dare dash forward. Potentially also deterred by a lack of fuel. There are a couple of targets out here that could sway the game in their favor. Oh, that's unfortunate. RBS 56 fire a missile at 62% accuracy and miss. Past Praga at this point is aware of their existence and tries to fall back but doesn't really make it. Whoa. Where have you been all my life? Well, all the game that is. Somebody bought an Apache longbow. This is one of those units that can be very effective early game, but late game, when the AA net is usually fairly solidly established, this is 150 points that you could have spent elsewhere. If I had 150 points at this point in the game, I would probably be starting to push over here on the right flank, or provide AA, because as you get closer to the Red 4 base, it is more and more tempting to start buying Red 4 aircraft. Because with that, you can quickly respond. Your line of supply, or your flight lines are really short. And the chance that Blue 4 AA shoots you down is low. Because most Blue 4 AA will be concentrated here, unless it moved up. So, by reversing that psychology, and going, yep, I'm going to provide AA over here, you can probably get quite a few airplane kills. Anyway, they have more or less managed to get this 10% margin, but not by a lot. Not by a lot. The game ends, and it's still a draw. 4,365 points for blue. 3,970 points for red. How do you get more losses for a team than you get kills by the other team? Sometimes stuff kills friendlies. Sometimes you get these blue on blue bombing runs, which just happen. You could call it inaccurate, you could call it unfortunate, whatever way you want to call it, I'm alright with it. It just happens. But sometimes you get these sort of discrepancies. Anyway, the Leclerc, while his maneuvering was interesting, did not actually get a lot of points. He got mostly a couple of transports, XA-180, a couple of OT-64s, SPW-80s. These are all really low value units. Higher value would be the Senke, VDV-90 and the Sopel. I know that the Leclerc could have gone a bit more aggressive, but it might have taken more damage as well. Personally, I probably would have been a little bit more offensive with that unit. It is a tank, it does have armor, albeit not that much, but you can push forward with it. Dash out, get some damage in, dash back. Especially in tandem with the smokescreen. As for the other players, Jomo, who sent it in, did very well. 540 in kills, 170 in losses. You could say that for a unit who was using a tank, you could get a bit more in kills, or you'd expect a bit more, but sometimes these fights on the open grounds on the left tend to be a little bit standoffish. You do a bit of damage, you repair your tank, they do a bit of damage, and they repair their tank. Nobody actually gets any kills until late game. Anyway, that's it for today. Hope you enjoyed the video. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you soon for more Wargame.